So, good morning, everyone. Like they said, my name is Miss Kenzie Mowry, and welcome to my final presentation. So, the plan for today, as every good teacher has objectives, these are not the right exact objectives, but we're going to answer these three questions. Who do I aspire to be as a teacher? What experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become a better agricultural educator? And how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunities? So the first question that I wanted to the first thing that I wanted to talk about is who I am. So I am from Fayette County, Pennsylvania. And if you don't know anything about Fayette County, we are an adventurous area. So I had to implement that anything that I do, I like to add some adventure and a spin to it. I grew up in the 4-H world. I didn't have an agricultural program in my county, but I grew up showing livestock. So you would see me at the fair showing lambs and goats and pigs and steers and loving every single minute of it. As I grew, my 4-H world grew. I was in Teen County Council, as well as I was a mentor in 4-H Connects with one of my best friends. And with that, I was able to mentor youth and teach them about life skills. And that was what made me decide to actually come to this major. Now I grow in my agricultural experiences through my sheep business. So I have a little tiny sheep business back home, as well as I help my boyfriend and his family at their farm where they have cattle, as well as a maple syrup operation. And I live and work at the Penn State Dairy Barns. So that has truly grew me in my dairy knowledge, and I've learned a lot there as well. So my first question that I'd like to answer today is, who do I aspire to be as an agricultural educator? I aspire to be comfortable yet uncomfortable. So I have this picture up here of me as Fayette County Fair Princess because I chose to do this opportunity and run for Fayette County Fair Princess to make myself go into those uncomfortable situations. I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone, but talk about agriculture in a new way. So this was kind of my first experience of making myself comfortable yet uncomfortable without realizing that that was the saying that goes with it. It wasn't until I visited Brockway last spring where I realized that this was kind of my motto for life. So I was visiting them and I was about to leave, and not my cooperating teacher, but the other ag teacher, Kyle Norman, he said to me, whatever you decide, wherever you decide to go, choose to be comfortable yet uncomfortable in whatever you do. And that really hit home for me because I wanted to find a place where I would be comfortable with what I'm doing and having those animal science things and just really excited about what I do, but then also uncomfortable and pushing myself to learn more, such as ag mechanics, where I'm not so strong with those skills yet. But yeah, so living comfortable yet uncomfortable as a teacher. So a few things that we work on as preparing for this internship opportunity is our teaching philosophy statement. So if you picked up a paper at the beginning of or outside, there is a QR code to my actual teaching philosophy statement, but there's just a small quote on here that I added that really hits home for me and is a major part of my teaching philosophy statement. The quote pretty much just says that if you ate or whatever you did in the morning, it had something to do with agriculture. And agriculture is just a big piece of who I am and what I would like to implement in the classroom. A few other pieces of my teaching philosophy statement is that I really want to work with diverse students and just ensuring that they're comfortable and confident in whatever we do, as well as I just want to have my students have that comfortable yet uncomfortable situations. So if you want to learn more about my teaching philosophy statement, go ahead and follow the QR code after my presentation, unless you're bored of me. So this is my classroom management plan that we have as well during our teaching experience. So it's important to have a thorough classroom management plan so that our students are getting the best out of their learning opportunities as possible. So I have the boards up here as well as on the board, but my classroom management has to do with my classroom procedures, my classroom expectations, and my classroom consequences. Some of my key expectations that I have for my classroom is that I want them to arrive ready to learn. I want them to be responsible in whatever they do. I want them to be intentional with everything that they do in the classroom as well as throughout the school. And I want them to be safe because Miss Mowry is not too big of a fan of blood. And if I'm in an ag neck class, I don't want to have to deal with that blood situation because I have a feeling I'll be on the floor. So I want them to be safe and to follow the safety protocols, as well as I want them to be respectful, both of the classroom and of their classmates and myself. So then my ideal agricultural program. So depending on where I will be once I graduate, I don't quite know what that looks like for me. But if I were to have an agricultural program, I would want it to be diverse in the subjects that we have. I would love to talk about plant science. I'd love to talk about soils and land management, as well as I would love to have animal science in there. I think it'd be really, really cool to have a sow in the classroom, which I learned about at a conference that I was just at. But I'd also love to have those ag mechanic skills. And I also feel that it's very important to have wildlife as an implementation in the agricultural classroom as well. I'm hoping to be in an area where we're around many state parks and forests so that we can have those implementations into our classroom. So I talked a lot about classroom laboratories, but there's two other pieces to the three-circle model that is agricultural education that I didn't really hit on yet. The first one would be SAE, which is supervised agricultural experience, and then the other one is FFA, which used to stand for Future Farmers of America, but now it is they still incorporate that as part of their history, but now it is FFA organization. So SAE, that is where the students are able to work on projects of themselves, whether it's raising an animal to exhibit, like I used to do, or working on an internship somewhere, such as a farm. They're able to work on their financial literacy, and they're able to have as much hands-on experience as possible during their SAE. And then we have FFA integration. So an ag classroom, many people call it the FFA classroom. Well, actually, it is an ag classroom, but FFA gets to be a part of the classroom and a part of the students' opportunities if they choose. So FFA is where students are able to work on their leadership skills and they're able to grow as themselves. They're able to work with the community and create awesome experiences throughout the community there. And they're able to have a lot of different experiential learning opportunities as well. Any good ag teacher is also going to have recruitment as part of their implementation. So a few things that I would have as part of my recruitment is I would have a video that I would have my students create. We had to create one for our class. I will say it's a little cringy, so I didn't want to show you guys it today. But I would have my students create that, and then we'd be able to use it on social media as well as use it in our school. Say if there was monitors around our school, play the video in our school. The second little object on there is supposed to be a display board. I would love to set up at club fairs as well as set up in the cafeteria and different events that our school has and just talk about FFA and talk about the agricultural classroom. I would have my students do it, but we all know that students also get burnt out. So I would set up with them as well. And then finally, I have a teacher talking to students. One piece of recruitment that I think would be really cool to implement as long as my school district allows it is to have a day where students can just come and have a tryout day with the agricultural classroom, where they can just come in and see what's going on. And if they learn anything about agriculture, especially where their foods comes from, and they choose not to take the class, then that's okay. But they have that opportunity to come in and see what agriculture is and what it's like. As part of that, we have agricultural education is a very hands-on classroom. So one of the things that I would love to implement is a $15 project that I created. So I created, this is called a rocket stove. So how this would work is that you would feed the kindling and the newspaper into this chute right here. And then we would start the fire, which would happen down here in the bottom. And now it's making my hands all gross. So I probably shouldn't have wore white today. But then it has air holes for the fire to be able to be fueled through oxygen. And then up here, we can set a pot or like a skillet to cook on. And you can take this wherever you want and go ahead and work on cooking something. This is pretty cool because it works through different processes of metal. So a few key things with it is welding on an angle. There's a few different places where you had to weld on a different angle. And this is a very trial and error project. I will say, if I were to do this again, I would take and change the degree of the feeding tube here, as whenever we tested this out, it didn't work very well getting it started. But once we got it going, it worked okay. But I would change the angle to have the feed of the kindling to go down a little bit easier, as well as I would make this top piece, the cooking stove, able to come off and put back on. But yeah, this cost about $10 to make, just because we had a lot of different scrap metal. But yeah, it's a pretty cool project that talks about metal shop as well as welding, and it's just a really cool project. And then we have community-based unit of instruction. So throughout my classroom, I hope to implement the community into what we do and what we talk about. One of the specific units that I would love to add this into is a forestry unit. I would love to talk about tree identification in my forestry unit, and then invite a park ranger to come in and talk with us about tree ID. And then we would take and go out to the local hiking trail and point out those trees. And then the students will be able to come back to the classroom, create some signs that we can put on the parking trail that explains the tree species and explains why it's important for that environment. But working with community-based instruction, I feel, is very important because it allows the students to have those careers come into full circle moments for them. So now we're on to my next question, which is, what experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become an agricultural educator? So some inspiring classes over my 3.5 years here at Penn State. The first one would be ag mechanics. So I'm going to be honest, whenever I first stepped in this classroom, I was a little bit nervous. My dad and my boyfriend and I have worked on a few different projects, but I wasn't truly the most comfortable in there. I will say I'm still a little bit uncomfortable in there, but I'm still working on pushing myself out of my comfort zone there. And I'm really excited to use and implement this into my future classroom. Native American history was a class that I took at Penn State Fayette. And that class was really cool for me because it was really one of the first classes that I saw truly diverse learning with that. One of the things that we did that I would love to implement one day is we went out to the school's garden that they have, and there was a Native American garden where all of the plant species in there was based on Native American history, which is really cool. Animal Science 201, I would be, I feel like I would be scolded if I didn't talk about Dale Over in that class. So Animal Science 201 for me, it was a very challenging class, but I cannot wait to implement that in the classroom. One of my favorite things that I had in Animal Science 201 was the ruminant digestion lab, where we actually got to work through a sheep digestive system, and we got to feel what the rumen actually looks like. I will say that does make people squeamish. My roommate did pass out on that one, but still, it is a really cool lab that I cannot wait to implement. And then finally, I added AE 311, which is developing youth leadership through organization and program instruction. So that class for me was a classroom where I was able to kind of realize, hey, it'd be pretty cool to be an ag teacher. Because whenever I came to Penn State, I just wanted to go into extension. But now that class was able for me to kind of realize, okay, I'd be happy in either place that I go to. Some certifications that I had completed over this past semester to grow my learning opportunities would be, the first one would be agricultural literacy. I got a certification with that. And the reason why I chose agricultural literacy was just to reinforce my agricultural education, as well as to find new things that I can implement in my classroom one day. I am first aid and CPR certified. I don't know how it's gonna happen with the blood, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. I'll get over my fear. I am also safe tractor driving certified. So I can teach about safe tractor driving. It's really funny though. I did the safe tractor driving course whenever I visited Brockway a few weeks ago, and I failed that course, but it's fine. Because I can drive a tractor, I promise. I don't know what happened that day. And then I finally, last week, I completed the parliamentary procedure exam, and I am an accredited parliamentarian, which Dr. Foster would be happy to share. And then some professional development that I did. So this shows a few different conferences that I was able to go to. The first one over here was last spring. We went to the Region 6 NAAE conference, which is National Agricultural Educators Association. And we got to learn with other agricultural educators about different things that we can implement in our classroom. And then we also went this 2 weeks ago, I think it was now, to San Antonio, Texas, over in the corner on that side. Those pictures show where we also got to work with NAAE and learn about other things that we can implement in the classroom, as well as we met other student teachers who are also in the same shoes as us right now. That was really awesome for me. I got to become really close with a lot of different people there. And I got to just hear other ag teachers' stories and where they came from and what they implement in their classroom. Some other things that I have on there is this picture right up here is the Paul Bunyan Lumber Show. So I feel that this was a professional development experience for me. While most people that go there was looking for something to buy to implement into their lumber experience, I was there to look at different educational resources and learn more about the forestry industry. So that was really cool to just see what the forestry industry has to offer. And then that picture of the piece of paper in the map is from Ag I Squared, which is Agricultural Inquiry-Based Institute, where we worked on inquiry-based learning. I don't know how I just said that right, but it's okay. And how we can implement that into our classroom, which is really neat. I had 2 different internships during my time at Penn State. Both of them was with Fayette County Penn State Extension. But each year was slightly different. The first year that I was there, I worked mostly with community-based classrooms, and we would go into the community and we would work on different lessons and skills, such as Hopwood Childcare, which is that one right there. And it was just a really neat learning opportunity for me because I worked with students from ages 5 years old to 18 years old. And I loved every single minute of what I did. I even got to implement my sheep into some of my educational experiences there. And as well as I had chicks the one day that was in my office, and there was like 60 chicks in there, and it stunk after about a week of them being there, and I wanted them out. But then this past year, whenever I did it, I was a little bit more of on the computer and doing more of those programming, the behind the scenes skills. But I did have a few different experiences where I got to go outside and work with students, such as my public speaking presentation up there. So I competed in that whenever I was in 4-H, and then this year I got to run it, which is a really cool full circle for me, especially because the first time that I competed in that, my best friend forced me to do it and I bawled my eyes out. I learned in some diversified learning situations as well. So one of the big things that we worked on this semester was working with LifeLink Gears, which is a special education classroom here on campus. We worked with them to implement agriculture into what they do. That was a really neat place for me, and I absolutely loved every single minute of teaching them about flowers and that experience. So some agricultural education professional goals that I have is to make a difference in a student's life, to be behind the scenes and let the students show off. I don't want to be that person that's just up in front all the time. I want my students to be the ones that get all of the recognition. I want to be intentional with my students and my actions. I want to advocate for agriculture in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm excited to find out. And I want to be impactful on my students and my youth. So how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching opportunity? So I will be student teaching at Brockway FFA. They are a really cool program that is very heavily AgMech based, but they have a very broad variety of what they do as well. So there's a few pictures on there that is of their barn that they have where they raise pigs. That was definitely the cherry on top for Brockway FFA for me. But then they also have a woodworking shop, a metalworking shop. They have a high tunnel, a tractor that I mentioned about failing the safe tractor driving on, and they have a greenhouse as well. They are a very diverse program that I'm excited to get to work with. So some key strengths that they have is their ag mechanics program. It is truly amazing what they do over there at Brockway. They have a diverse program in terms of the lessons that they do, and they are very heavily grant funded. Whenever I visited them the first time, we walked through the shop and they went, this was this much from this grant. This was this much from this grant. And we just went around both of their AgMech shops and they taught me about that. And I would really love to learn how to work with grant funding. And they have a decently well administration support as well. It was really funny. One of their machines that they had broke down whenever I visited. And then I went back 2 weeks later and they just got it fixed. And that was like a $3,000-4,000 machine that needed fixed. So it was pretty cool to see how well they can have that turnaround and get things fixed back up. Some strengths that I would love to take to Brockway. So I mentioned Rosie the Riveter on here because whenever I visited the last time that I was there, we were in the agricultural classroom and the students, there was these 2 girls who were just like, I'm not going to learn how to do ag mechanics because I'm going to let my husband do it. And Holt was trying really hard to get them to work on it and just work through ag mechanics, but they were not listening. So I really want to implement the female side of ag mechanics and that girls can do it too. I would love to work with their compost bins that they have. They aren't able to implement it right now just because they haven't found the time to do it. So I'd love to implement that. And I would love to work with their students with their SAE projects in terms of their livestock projects and kind of give back on that piece. So whenever I visited in the spring, I went on SAE visits with them, I guess over the summer, and we were going to each of their students' places, and I got to help coach them on their livestock showmanship skills, which is one of my favorite things to do. So what does Brockway look like in other terms? So they are a 45-minute class period. This is their bell schedule that they have. They start at 7:40 in the morning and then they're done at 3 o'clock. And then I created unit plans, 16 unit plans to be exact, to be able to student teach there in the spring. And I'm really excited because if you can't tell, it's a really diverse learning experience for me. So I'm really excited for that. And then I created 45 lesson plans to be able to student teach in the spring, which is just the beginning of my lesson plans. And then this is their school calendar, which you can see right here. I implemented that into my lesson plan schedule to keep me kind of centered and focused throughout the semester. So overall, some professional growth goals that I have is I want to become confident in the ag mechanics shop while I'm student teaching in the spring. I want to grow my knowledge for natural resources. I want to improve my classroom management skills. I want to create a positive and healthy environment for my students. And finally, I want to engage with my community partners and implement their resources in my classroom, such as the CBU that I mentioned earlier. So thank you so much for coming to my final presentation today. I am truly grateful for each and every one of you that is in this classroom right now. So with that, are there any questions?
Again, for our audience, we're going to have a quick question and answer period. We will sort of rotate between our online crowd and our face-to-face crowd and our faculty and staff panel. So first, I would like to request the people online go ahead and type your questions in the chat. Maya will be moving those over to us. Is there a question from the faculty first?
Absolutely. Kenzie, I heard you say the word yet.
Yet.
You're referring, I believe, to your confidence in ag mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
How will you cultivate a yet mindset through your day-to-day instruction for your students? I'm looking for you to specifically share with me of how you're going to operationalize a yet mindset for your students through how and what you do in your teaching.
Well, each student that comes into my classroom, they're going to have a different skill set behind them whenever they come in. And my goal is to have them to broaden their skill set with my uncomfortable yet uncomfortable mindset and implement that into the classroom so that they know that they can be uncomfortable with whatever they do. And they are going to eventually, by putting in the hard work and the determination to get there. So I want them to work with that yet mindset and explain to them that it's okay that if you fail at this point, but we're going to get there at some point, and it's going to happen, even if it's not quite yet.
So how does that influence your pedagogical decisions or how you assess learning or how you work there? Is there anything you're going to change about how you actually teach to make sure that they could fulfill what you just described?
As I would love to see my students grow with whatever they do. I want them to be able to feel comfortable with whatever we're doing. And yes, I will have exams that they'll have to work on, but I'll have ways that they can retake the exams, as well as where they can show me that they do know what's actually happening, even if the exam stresses them out.
Thank you.
Kenzie, tell me something that you are excited to do with student teaching and what you're currently or will be doing to prepare for that.
Ooh, what am I not excited about? I'm excited to be able to be in the classroom at Brockway. Their students are absolutely amazing. I was able to go with them to National FFA convention, and I loved every single minute of it there. So I'm excited to be able to just be in the classroom and be with them and get to teach them in new ways.
All right, there is a question from the Zoom audience. Sean says, I love the comfortable yet uncomfortable motto. As you lead and educate students, how will you use your experiences at Penn State to help motivate and inspire the future ag professionals?
Can you say that one more time?
Oh yeah, it's a mouthful. As you lead and educate students, how will you use your experiences at Penn State to help motivate and inspire the future ag professionals?
One thing that I'd love to specifically talk about is the Penn State dairy barns and how that impacted me. So I did not grow up in the dairy world. My friends were showing dairy livestock, but I did not grow up in that. So whenever I came to Penn State, I wanted to live and work at a barn, but I wanted to find a place that was new and different for me. And I just wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone to be able to learn that project and learn about that species of livestock so that I can implement it in the future. So I would love to be able to talk about the dairy industry in my classroom one day.
Question from the audience.
Quiet room.
What are the most beneficial things you've learned while you've worked at the dairy farm?
One of the most beneficial things that I've learned is that each dairy is different. So Penn State Dairy Barns is very heavily research-based, which means, and there's a lot of different students that work with them. So I realized that they are not feminists. The cows are, I should say. They do not move very well for the female workers unless you use a male voice. So sometimes if you hear me, I will be yelling in a male voice to get them to move. But I got to work to help out at a family farm that's close home for a few days back home over the summer, where I saw that their cows are completely different. All I had to do was walk in the barn and they knew that it was time to go down. Where the dairy cows over there, they push your limits and test your buttons. Yes.
What frightens you the most, and how do you plan on overcoming that?
What is that?
What frightens you the most about student teaching, and how do you plan on overcoming that?
I would say the thing that frightens me the most is that since I didn't come from an agricultural education program, that my students are going to look down on me for that. My students that I went with to national convention, they were very excited for me. So I don't worry with that with them, but I have a feeling that other students might be able to do that. So just making sure that I'm learning as much as I can from them and with them about the ag classroom and just ensuring that I'm confident in whatever I do.
All right. We have one other one from Zoom, sorry. From Mike Brammer, so, yeah.
Yeah, you need to get questions.
He says, great presentation. Since you have no FFA background, how will you ensure FFA as one of the 3 circles of ag ed is offered and encouraged to your students?
Since I wasn't given this opportunity in high school, I want to make sure that my students have every opportunity possible to go to those different conferences and just be out there in the FFA world. I love seeing them, all the FFA students gather together, especially at the summer conference that was here. And just working together and having that fellowship between each other. So I want them to be involved as much as they can, and I'm excited to get to see them thrive in whatever they do.
As like students in the major, what student organizations and clubs do you think
Aside from like the experiences you listed, what students or what organizations, clubs do you think that members of our major should like look at to get kind of build their experiences?
So I joined 3 different clubs while I was here. And I was in 3 or 4 different clubs whenever I was at Penn State Fayette. So the 3 clubs that I did while I was here was Block and Bridle, Collegiate Cattlewomen, and Dairy Science Club. Now, yes, they are all livestock based, but for me, since that's my niche place to be, I loved being in that and gaining those industry connections. So that one day, whenever my friend is a nutritionist or my friend is a veterinarian, I'm able to call on them and be like, hey, will you come teach in my classroom one day? So just finding those clubs that are outside of agricultural education, yeah, that's amazing to be in the FFA alumni and supporters. For me, I just wasn't able to add another club on my plate to join that one, but having those extra connections will really help it one day. So, yeah.
Kenzie, I'd like for you to fast forward 8 months from now, and for the sake of argument, let's just say you're hired by a school district that's putting in a brand new ag program, and they're hiring you to be their ag teacher. They don't know what they're doing. They want an ag program, but they're looking to you because you're the expert, you know what you're doing. What are your first steps? What are your first steps in determining your scope and sequence, your curriculum? That could be a 3-hour response, I know, but I just want to know your immediate thoughts on what was your first job on the job in developing a brand new program.
So my first steps would be to look at that area's need and what it is that they do in that area. So if that area is a very wildlife-based area, then absolutely, I want to have agricultural education classes that are focused on wildlife in there. If they are more of a welding industry place, then I want to make sure that that's something that's really highlighted. But I want to focus that program on whatever that area is the most well-versed in, I should say, just because that's where those students are going to end up in the field one day, wherever they're working. So I just want to make sure that they are able to gain those skills, whether or not I'm comfortable in those skills. We will work on that together.
You have time for 1 or 2 more questions?
Yes.
Okay, I got one more for you. You started at Commonwealth campus, and I'm not sure if we have some Commonwealth campus students on the Zoom or not. But what advice would you give to those students that are starting at Commonwealth campuses as they pursue the major?
So I loved my experience at my Commonwealth campus just because I was able to save a lot of money by going there. I was also heavily involved with my clubs there as well. So be involved as much as you can while you're there. I was the president of my Christian club there for 2 years. And pretty much everything that we did, I was right there doing it with them. But I would say to come up here as soon as you can. So as soon as you hit that 12 credit limit where they say, hey, only do 12 credits this semester, no, go up to State College then. Because for me, I just felt like it held me back ever so slightly. And I'm slightly playing catch up just to make sure that I'm able to graduate on time. So just making sure that you don't hit that 12 credit limit. And then once you do get up here, find your people. For me, it was at the Penn State Dairy Barns where I found my people. But just find your people and find where you can be as soon as you can. Because people are going to look at you like you're a freshman whenever you come up here. And that's a little bit scary because you're not a freshman, you're a junior. But just finding your people and standing out.
That's a great place to end it. Can we give her a big round of applause? Thank you, Kenzie, for setting the bar high for your cohort members. We're going to ask the public group that you retired back in 2014.